The black ledger hit the marble floor at exactly 9:47 a.m., and Jiwook's whole world stopped. His hand was still reaching out, fingers stretched like he could somehow catch it before gravity did its job. But it was too late. The book fell in what felt like slow motion, spinning once in the air before it smacked against the white marble with a sound that echoed through his mother's private study like a gunshot. For 3 seconds that felt like 3 years, he just stood there staring at it. This wasn't just any book. This was 20 years of his mother's crimes bound in letter. Every bribe she'd ever paid, every judge she owned, every politician in her pocket, every dirty secret she'd used to build her empire. And it was lying there face up on the floor where it had slipped from his shaking hands. If you're watching this right now, you need to understand something. What you're about to see in the next hour and 20 minutes is going to hurt. It's going to make you angry. It's going to make you want to reach through the screen and shake some sense into these people. But you need to see it, because this is what happens when powerful families decide that children are property and love is weakness. So hit that subscribe button right now, because this episode is going to show you whether any of this pain was worth it. And trust me, you're going to need to see how this ends, in case we need a part 4. And can I ask you the simplest question in the world? Where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it? Drop it in the comments section, and let's continue.
K. Afro Tales. The weak will become strong one day.
Jiwook dropped to his knees and grabbed the ledger. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold it. Page 48 was staring right at him. A medical report, his daughter's name at the top, Han Zara, date of birth, March 15th, 2019, and underneath that, words that made his blood run cold. Patient tested positive for factor V Leiden heterozygous mutation, inherited thrombophilia, genetic origin, paternal lineage, Han family genetic line, documented in 3 previous generations. His daughter had a blood disorder, had it for 8 months according to the date on this report. 8 months that his mother knew and never told him, never told Amara, just kept it secret so she could use it as justification for why Zara needed family medical oversight, why the child needed to be with the Han family instead of her mother. His phone buzzed in his pocket, text from Mrs. Song, the housekeeper he'd bribed 50 million won to let him into this study. Madam Han just left the office building. 22 minutes until she's home. Whatever you're doing, finish it now. 22 minutes. He had 22 minutes to photograph 47 pages of evidence that could destroy Korea's 12th largest company. 22 minutes to document every crime his mother had committed over 2 decades. 22 minutes to save his daughter, or lose her forever. His hands moved on autopilot, phone out, camera app open, first page, click, upload to encrypted cloud, second page, click, upload, third page. His watch said he'd already burned 7 minutes just standing there frozen after dropping the book. 15 minutes left, 44 pages to go.
Page 12 showed CPS investigator Park Min-jung, the woman who'd filed that bogus report about Amara's apartment being unsuitable for a child. Right there in black and white. Payment received, 200 million won, offshore account, Cayman Islands. And below that, leverage obtained. Photographs of Park accepting cash payment in hotel parking lot, time-stamped high resolution. His mother didn't just bribe people. She documented the bribes so she could blackmail them later if they ever tried to back out. That's how you build an empire that lasts 40 years. You don't just buy people, you own them. Page 18 made him want to throw up. Judge Lee Sang-wook, Seoul Family Court, the same judge who would hear any custody case involving the Han family. Blackmail material, video evidence of affair with paralegal. Additional leverage, brother employed at Han Star Technologies, senior management, salary dependent on family goodwill. The judge was owned 3 different ways. There was no such thing as a fair hearing in his courtroom, not when your opponent was a Han. Jiwook kept photographing, page after page. Bribery, blackmail, corruption so normalized it didn't even look criminal on the page, just looked like business. facilitated university admission, provided regulatory advance warning, ensured favorable media coverage. Every line was a crime dressed up in corporate language. Page 27 showed immigration official Choi, the same guy who'd shown up at Amara's bookstore with threats about visa irregularities. Payment received, his son's admission to Seoul National University Medical School, full scholarship through the Han Family Charitable Education Fund. Page 31 showed a Supreme Court justice whose gambling debts had been quietly erased. Page 34 showed a prosecutor whose daughter's drug charges had disappeared. Page after page of powerful people who thought they were untouchable until Madam Han decided they were useful. His phone buzzed again. Mrs. Song. She just turned onto our street. 8 minutes. Hurry.
8 minutes. He still had 19 pages left. His fingers moved faster. Click, upload, click, upload. The phone was heating up in his hand from the constant camera use and data uploads. Page 41 showed media contacts. Journalists who'd killed stories about Hanstar. Editors who'd buried investigations. TV producers who'd ensured favorable coverage. The whole media landscape bent to his mother's will. Page 43 showed government officials at the Blue House, presidential staffers who provided advance warning of policy changes, regulatory officials who looked the other way when Hanstar needed them to. Page 45 detailed the contingency protocols. What to do if the Han family ever faced real trouble. Step 1. Activate media contacts. Step 2. Leverage judicial connections. Step 3. Use political pressure. Step 4. Transfer assets offshore. Step 5. If necessary, relocate key family members beyond Korean jurisdiction. His mother had an escape plan, had always had one. Even if everything came crashing down, she'd prepared ways to avoid consequences. 6 minutes left, according to his watch. 3 pages to go. Page 46. Page 47. Done. Then he flipped to page 48 again. The medical report about Zara. He read it more carefully this time, and one line at the bottom jumped out at him. Patient's mother, Williams Amara, has been notified of results and management protocols. That was a lie. Jiwook knew it was a lie because Amara would have told him immediately if she learned Zara had any health condition. They'd been co-parenting peacefully for 18 months before everything fell apart. Medical information was always shared, always discussed, always handled together. This report was generated 8 months ago, filed in his mother's private records, and deliberately hidden from Zara's actual parent. His mother had known about his daughter's condition for 8 months and used it as secret ammunition for her custody claims. 4 minutes left, according to his watch. 3 pages to go. Page 46. Page 47. Done. Then he flipped to page 48 again. The medical report about Zara. He read it more carefully this time, and one line at the bottom jumped out at him. Patient's mother, Williams Amara, has been notified of results and management protocols. That was a lie. Jiwook knew it was a lie because Amara would have told him immediately if she'd learned Zara had any health condition. They'd been co-parenting peacefully for 18 months before everything fell apart. Medical information was always shared, always discussed, always handled together. This report was generated 8 months ago, filed in his mother's private records, and deliberately hidden from Zara's actual parent. His mother had known about his daughter's condition for 8 months and used it as secret ammunition for her custody claims. 4 minutes left. Jiwook checked his phone. All 48 pages uploaded successfully to encrypted cloud storage, backed up to 3 separate servers, time-stamped, authenticated. He had the weapon, had everything needed to destroy his mother's empire.
He put the ledger back in its hiding place, behind the backwards copy of The Art of War on the bookshelf, closed the hidden compartment, put the book back, made sure everything looked exactly like he'd found it. 3 minutes. He walked to the study door, opened it as quietly as possible, and stepped into the hallway, and nearly ran straight into Eun-ji. She was standing there like she'd been waiting for him, arms crossed, wearing a silk blouse and tailored pants that probably cost more than most people's cars. Her expression was calm, amused, victorious. She knew exactly what he'd been doing. "Interesting morning," she asked. "I was looking for a book. Ji-wook said, trying to keep his voice steady even though his heart was trying to hammer its way out of its chest. In your mother's private study? The one that's kept locked specifically because she doesn't want people looking for books in there? Eun-ji smiled, and there was nothing kind about it. Ji-wook, we both know what you were doing. The question is, what are you planning to do with those photos? So she knew about the photographs, had probably been monitoring his phone activity, tracking his cloud uploads, documenting his every move since he'd signed those contracts 2 days ago. I don't know what you're talking about, Ji-wook said, moving past her toward his childhood bedroom. Her hand shot out and grabbed his wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Don't play games with me. I have access to your phone's activity. I know you uploaded 48 images to encrypted cloud storage in the last 37 minutes. I know you photographed every page of your mother's insurance policy against the world, and I know you're planning to use it as leverage.
She was right about everything, which meant Ji-wook was in deeper trouble than he'd thought. If Eun-ji knew, she could tell his mother, could alert everyone documented in that ledger, could trigger those contingency protocols and dismantle his entire plan before he even started. What do you want? Ji-wook asked, because people who confronted you with evidence always wanted something. I want you to understand the rules, Eun-ji said, stepping closer. Too close. Close enough that he could smell her perfume, something expensive and floral that made him want to step back, but his feet wouldn't cooperate. You have evidence that could destroy your mother. I have evidence that you stole that evidence. You expose her, I expose you as a thief who broke into private property. She goes down, but so do you. And when you go down, who gets Zara? Not Amara, she's already been deemed unstable by the courts thanks to me. Not you, you'll be facing criminal charges. So who gets her? Your mother's designated successor in those custody documents you signed, which happens to be me. The words hit like ice water. Ji-wook stared at her, his mind racing back through those contracts he'd signed. Page 52, section 19, subsection C. Something about designated guardians in case of parental unfitness. He'd assumed that meant his mother. He'd assumed wrong. You planned this from the beginning, he said quietly. I didn't let you find anything, Eun-ji corrected. You're actually very clever when you're desperate. I just made sure that whatever you found would be useless. Because the moment you try to expose your mother, you destroy yourself. And the moment you destroy yourself, Zara becomes mine. Mine to raise, mine to use as leverage against everyone. And there's nothing you can do about it. She was right. Ji-wook saw the trap now, saw how perfectly constructed it was. If he used the evidence, he'd face criminal charges for theft. If he faced charges, he'd lose custody. If he lost custody during criminal proceedings, Zara would go to the designated guardian, to Eun-ji, the woman he'd left at the altar 5 years ago, the woman who wanted revenge more than anything else in the world. So what now? Ji-wook asked. You tell my mother and trigger this whole thing yourself?
No, Eun-ji said. I let you keep your little insurance policy. Let you think you have power. Let you plan your rebellion. And when you finally work up the courage to use those photos, I'll be ready. Ready to take Zara. Ready to watch you lose everything for the second time. Footsteps on the stairs. His mother's voice calling out. Ji-wook, are you home? I thought I heard voices. Eun-ji stepped back, smoothed her blouse, transformed her expression from predatory to pleasant in half a second. We were just discussing wedding plans, she called out sweetly. Ji-wook is so helpful with all the details. His mother appeared at the top of the stairs, perfect as always, wearing a Chanel suit that probably cost more than a car. Wedding plans? I thought the coordinator was handling everything. She is, Eun-ji said, but I wanted Ji-wook's input on the guest list, making sure we include everyone important to both families. Madam Han smiled and walked over, placed a hand on Ji-wook's shoulder. I'm so glad you two are working together on this. Marriage is a partnership, after all, built on trust and mutual support. The irony was so thick, Ji-wook almost laughed. Trust, mutual support. He'd been blackmailed into this engagement, coerced into Eun-ji's bed last night in a way that still made his skin crawl when he thought about it. And now he was being trapped in a web where every move he made would end with his daughter being raised by his enemy. But sure, trust and mutual support. "I need to get to the office," Ji-wook said, pulling away from his mother's touch. "Board meeting at 10. "Of course," his mother said. "Your driver is waiting. And Ji-wook, thank you for coming home. I know it wasn't easy, but you made the right choice. For Zara, for the family, for everyone."
He left without responding, walked down the massive staircase, past the portraits of 4 generations of Han family leaders, out to the black sedan where his driver had been opening doors for him since he was 8 years old. His phone buzzed. Text from attorney Lee Sun-hee, the family law specialist he'd retained before surrendering to his mother's demands. "Heard you're back at Hanstar. Does this mean you're withdrawing from the custody case?" Ji-wook stared at the message. Attorney Lee didn't know about the contracts, didn't know about the blackmail, didn't know about Eunji's trap, didn't know that Ji-wook was now playing a game with rules he didn't understand against opponents who'd been planning this for months or maybe years. He typed back, "No, proceeding as planned. We'll explain later. Keep preparing." Another text, this one from an unknown number. "I know what you're planning. I know you think you have evidence that matters, but evidence only matters if you can use it, and you can't. Not without destroying yourself. So here's my advice. Stop planning, stop scheming, accept your new life. Marry me, raise your daughter in luxury, and maybe, if you're very good, I'll let you be happy. Or at least let you pretend. E." Eunji taunting him, reminding him that she was always watching, always listening, always 3 steps ahead. Ji-wook deleted the message, then opened his encrypted cloud storage and verified that all 48 photos were backed up safely. They were. He had the evidence, had the weapon, had everything needed to destroy his mother's empire. He just couldn't use it without destroying himself and losing Zara in the process. The car pulled up to Hanstar Technologies headquarters, the 47-story glass tower in Gangnam that represented everything his family had built over 4 generations. Everything his great-grandfather had started as a small trading company in the aftermath of the Korean War. Everything his grandfather had transformed into a manufacturing powerhouse during Korea's economic miracle. Everything his father had expanded into technology and semiconductors. Everything his mother had weaponized into an instrument of control and corruption. And now everything that Ji-wook was supposed to lead into the next generation.
He walked through the lobby where 200 employees applauded his return, a PR stunt arranged by the communications team to send a message to the media and stockholders that the prodigal son was home and the company was stable again. He forced a smile, waved, took the private elevator to the 43rd floor executive suite, walked past his old colleagues who whispered and stared, and entered the corner office that had been kept exactly as he'd left it 18 months ago when he'd walked away from all of this for Amara. The desk was the same. The chair was the same. The view of Seoul's skyline was the same. Everything was the same except him. 18 months ago, he'd left this office believing that love and principle were enough to build a life on, that he could walk away from power and wealth and still protect the people he cared about, that being a good father was more important than being a CEO. He'd been naive, stupid, idealistic in a world that punished idealism and rewarded ruthlessness. His laptop was sitting on the desk right where he'd left it, still logged into the company network with the same password he'd used 18 months ago. His mother hadn't even bothered changing his access credentials, had known he'd be back eventually, had known that men like him always came back because there was nowhere else to go when you were born into families like this. Ji-wook sat in the leather chair that fit his body perfectly because it had been custom designed for him 8 years ago when he'd first taken over as CEO. He swiveled to face the window and looked out at the city he'd once commanded from this office. Seoul spread out before him like a circuit board, millions of people going about their lives completely unaware that their government, their courts, their institutions were being manipulated by people like his mother, people who collected leverage the way other people collected art, people who traded in favors, in blackmail and corruption, so normalized it didn't even feel criminal anymore, just felt like business, just felt like the way the world actually worked beneath the polite surface everyone pretended was real.
His phone buzzed. Calendar reminder, board meeting in 15 minutes.
He had 15 minutes to transform himself from the man who'd spent the morning committing corporate espionage against his own mother into the man who would stand in front of 12 board members and present a 90-day strategic plan for Honstar's continued growth and market dominance. 15 minutes to compartmentalize the fact that less than 12 hours ago, he'd been coerced into having sex with a woman who'd blackmailed him, who'd told him afterward that she wasn't on birth control, who'd made it clear that she was trying to get pregnant with his child as some kind of revenge insurance policy that would tie them together forever. 15 minutes to become the person everyone in this building needed him to be. 14 minutes now. He opened his laptop and pulled up the presentation he'd been working on yesterday, the strategic plan that outlined Honstar's expansion into Southeast Asian markets, the R&D investments in next-generation semiconductor technology, the cost optimization strategies that would increase profit margins by 7% over the next fiscal year. The presentation was good, professional, exactly what the board wanted to hear, exactly what would reassure stockholders and stabilize the company's market position and prove that Han Ji-wook was back and ready to lead. 13 minutes. His door opened without a knock. Eun-ji walked in, closed it behind her, locked it. "What are you doing here?" Ji-wook asked, not turning away from his laptop because he couldn't look at her right now. Couldn't see her face without remembering last night, without feeling his skin crawl, without wanting to throw up.
I wanted to make sure we're clear on the rules before your board meeting, Eun-ji said, walking around the desk to stand between him and the window, forcing him to either look at her or close his eyes. He kept them open, but focused on a point past her left shoulder. You're going to walk into that boardroom and be brilliant. You're going to present your strategic plan and answer questions and reassure everyone that Honstar is in capable hands. You're going to be the CEO they need you to be. And then you're going to come home to the mansion, have dinner with your mother and me, and continue pretending that this is your choice, that you want to be here, that you're happy. "And if I don't?" Ji-wook asked, though he already knew the answer. "Then I make one phone call and the emergency custody hearing happens tomorrow instead of next week. I present evidence of your unstable behavior, your theft of confidential documents, your erratic decision-making, and I get temporary custody of Zara while the courts sort out your criminal charges. Your choice, Ji-wook. Play your part or lose everything today." She was bluffing, had to be bluffing, except her eyes said she wasn't bluffing at all. Her eyes said she'd been planning this for so long that every contingency was accounted for. Every possible move he could make had a counter-move prepared. Every path to freedom was blocked. "I'll play my part," Ji-wook said quietly, hating himself for surrendering again, for choosing the path of least resistance again, for being exactly the obedient son his mother had raised him to be. "Good," Eun-ji said, reaching out to straighten his tie, even though it was already perfectly straight. "And tonight, after dinner, we need to discuss our wedding vows. I want them to be meaningful, authentic, something that will make people cry."
She left. Ji-wook sat at his desk for another minute, trying to control his breathing, trying to push down the rage and shame and helplessness, trying to become the man he needed to be for the next several hours. His phone buzzed again. Text from Amara. "Zara asked me this morning why you're on TV with another woman. What am I supposed to tell her? That our father lied to me about a work meeting and actually went back to his old company and old life and old fiancé? Please call me. Please explain what's happening. Please tell me this isn't what it looks like." Ji-wook stared at the message. He couldn't call her, couldn't explain, couldn't tell her that he'd signed contracts giving his mother partial custody rights over Zara. Couldn't tell her about Eun-li's blackmail, couldn't tell her about the coercion, or the pregnancy threat, or the trap he was caught in. Because if he told her, she'd try to help, she'd try to fight, and Eun-ji had made it clear that if Amara interfered, it would be used as evidence of her instability, her inability to accept court decisions, her pattern of coaching Zara to mistrust authority figures. He typed back, "I'll explain everything soon. Trust me. Please just trust me for a few more days." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "I trusted you 5 years ago when you said you'd choose me over your family. I trusted you 18 months ago when you said you'd left that world behind.
I'm out of trust, Jiwook. Whatever you're doing it alone. The dots disappeared and didn't come back. 10 minutes until the board meeting.
Jiwook stood up, straightened his jacket, checked his appearance in the mirror behind his desk. He looked exactly like he was supposed to look. Expensive suit, confident posture, the face of a man who belonged in this office, who was born to lead this company, who had never questioned whether any of this was worth it. He looked like his father had looked, like his grandfather had looked, like 4 generations of Han family leaders who'd built an empire and destroyed anyone who threatened it. He looked like someone he didn't recognize anymore. The board meeting went exactly as planned. Jiwook presented his 90-day strategic plan with the kind of polish and confidence that came from years of practice, years of being groomed to stand in front of rooms like this and make people believe in whatever vision he was selling. The 12 board members, 10 men in their 60s and 70s, 2 women who'd fought their way to the top of Korea's male-dominated business world, asked predictable questions and received satisfying answers. Market projections, competitive analysis, risk mitigation strategies, everything they needed to hear to justify their continued support of the Han family's leadership. One board member, a man named Park, who'd been on the board since before Jiwook was born, asked the question that was really on everyone's mind. Mr. Han, you left this company rather abruptly 18 months ago. What assurances can you give us that this return is permanent, that we won't wake up in another year and a half to find you've walked away again? Jiwook looked at the man, at the barely concealed skepticism in his eyes, at the challenge disguised as professional concern. I left because I made a mistake. I thought I could build a life separate from this company, separate from my responsibilities to this family and to all of you. I was wrong. This is where I belong. This is what I was born to do, and I can promise you I won't make the same mistake twice.
The words tasted like ash in his mouth, but they had the desired effect. Park nodded, satisfied. The other board members relaxed slightly. His mother, sitting at the head of the table in her role as board chair, smiled. "Then I believe we can move forward with confidence," Madam Han said. "The market has responded positively to Jiwook's return. Our stock is up 23% since the announcement yesterday. Investor confidence is restored. The company is stable. I propose we adjourn and reconvene next month for our regular quarterly review." The meeting ended. Board members congratulated Jiwook as they filed out, welcoming him back, expressing relief that the leadership uncertainty was over. Jiwook shook hands and accepted their praise and played his part perfectly. When the room was empty except for his mother, she walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did well," she said. "I knew you would. You were always meant for this, Jiwook. Not for some bookstore in Itaewon. Not for that woman who could never understand what it means to carry the Han family name. This is your destiny, and I'm glad you finally stopped fighting it." "May I be excused?" Jiwook asked, not trusting himself to say anything else. "Of course. But remember, family dinner tonight at 7. The 3 of us. Eunji wants to discuss wedding details."
Jiwook left the boardroom and took the elevator down to the 42nd floor to a small conference room that was rarely used. He locked the door, sat in one of the chairs, and let himself feel everything he'd been suppressing for the past 2 hours. Rage at being trapped, shame at surrendering, fear that he'd never escape, grief for the life he'd almost built with Amara, for the 18 months of peace they'd had, for the future they'd planned where Izara would grow up with both parents who actually loved each other instead of this nightmare of contracts and blackmail and forced marriage to a woman who'd assaulted him. His phone buzzed. Text from Attorney Lee. "Emergency. Call me now." Jiwook called. "We have a problem," Attorney Lee said without preamble. "The CPS investigator just filed her final report. It's bad, Jiwook, really bad. She's recommending emergency custody modification, claiming Amara's living situation is unstable, her financial situation is questionable, and there are concerns about her mental health. They're requesting an emergency hearing tomorrow at noon." Tomorrow? Jiwook's mind raced. That's not possible. We're supposed to have more time. They expedited everything, called in favors. This is a coordinated attack, and it's happening fast. You need to tell me right now, what leverage do we have? What evidence can we present to counter their claims? The Black Ledger photos.
Jiwook had evidence that the CPS investigator was bribed, that the entire investigation was fraudulent, that his mother had orchestrated everything. But Eunji's warning echoed in his mind. Use the evidence and face criminal charges for theft. Face criminal charges and lose custody to Eunji. It was the same trap, just accelerated. I need to think, Jiwook said. Give me until tonight. We don't have until tonight. The hearing is tomorrow at noon. That's less than 24 hours. If we're going to fight this, we need to start preparing now. Then prepare for a custody modification, Jiwook said, the plan forming in his mind as he spoke. Prepare to argue that Zara should stay with family while Amara addresses the concerns raised. Prepare to position me as the stable alternative.
Silence on the other end. Then, you're going to betray her. You're going to stand in that courtroom and agree with them that Amara isn't fit to have custody. I'm going to do what's necessary to make sure my daughter doesn't end up in foster care or with strangers. If that means temporary custody modification while we build a real case, then yes, that's what I'm doing. She'll never forgive you. I know. And you're okay with that? No, but I don't have any good options left. Just different versions of terrible. He hung up before Attorney Lee could argue further. His phone buzzed immediately with another text from Amara. The school just called. Someone from Child Protective Services showed up asking questions about Zara. What is happening, Jiwook? What is happening? His fingers hovered over the keyboard. He could tell her the truth, could explain everything. The contracts, the blackmail, Eunji's trap, his plan to record the custody hearing and expose the corruption later, even if it meant looking like a villain now. Could trust that she'd understand, that she'd wait, that she'd believe he was doing this to save Zara rather than to hurt her. But Eunji's warning played in his mind again. If Amara interferes, if she coaches Zara, if she tries to fight back, it will be used as evidence of her inability to accept court decisions, her tendency to poison the child against authority figures. He typed back, "Don't talk to anyone from CPS without a lawyer present. I'll explain everything soon. I'm sorry." Her response came immediately. "You keep saying you'll explain. You keep saying to trust you, but all I see is you going back to the exact life you swore you'd left behind. So no, Jiwook, I don't trust you. Not anymore."
The rest of the day was a blur of meetings and strategic discussions and pretending to care about market share and quarterly projections, while his entire world collapsed around him. At 7 p.m., he went back to the mansion for dinner. His mother was already at the table. Eunji arrived 5 minutes later wearing a dress that probably cost more than Amara's monthly bookstore revenue. Dinner was traditional Korean food prepared by the mansion's private chef, course after course of dishes Jiwook had grown up eating, dishes that once meant comfort and family and home, but now tasted like obligation and imprisonment. His mother talked about the wedding plans, about the guest list that had grown to 500 people, about the venue and the flowers and the media coverage that would rehabilitate both the Han and Kang family reputations after the scandal of Jiwook leaving Eunji at the altar 5 years ago. Eunji talked about her dress, about the honeymoon she'd planned to Bora Bora, about the house she wanted them to buy together, even though Jiwook would be living at the mansion for the first 6 months per the contract he'd signed. She talked about everything, except the fact that she'd blackmailed him into this marriage, that she'd filed false CPS reports, that she'd assaulted him last night and threatened to use pregnancy as permanent leverage. Jiwook said almost nothing, just moved food around his plate and counted the hours until he could escape to his childhood bedroom and be alone with his thoughts and his rage and his helplessness. At 9 p.m., his mother retired to her wing of the mansion. Eunji stood up, walked over to Jiwook, and whispered, "My room, 10 p.m. We need to discuss something important. Don't be late." She left before he could refuse.
Jiwook sat alone at the massive dining table in the mansion he'd grown up in, surrounded by generations of family portraits and antique furniture, and all the trappings of wealth and power that had never made anyone in his family actually happy. His phone buzzed. Another text from Amara, the 4th one today. "Zara asked me tonight why you don't live with us anymore. She said her friend Hannah's parents live together, and she wants to know why you can't."
What am I supposed to tell her, Jiwook? That her father chose money over family? That he went back to the people who tried to destroy us? That he's marrying someone else? Please give me something I can tell our daughter that won't break her heart. And there it was, the question Jiwook had no answer for, because anything he told Zara would be either a lie or a truth too complicated for a 5-year-old to understand. How do you explain to a child that her father was being blackmailed, that he was trapped in contracts designed to control custody, that he was trying to protect her by surrendering himself? You don't. You can't. So you just become the villain in her story and hope that someday, when she's older, she might understand. He went upstairs to his childhood bedroom at 9:45 p.m., knowing he had 15 minutes before he was expected in Unji's room, knowing what she wanted, knowing he had no power to refuse. The bedroom was exactly as he'd left it when he went to Stanford at 18. Debate trophies on shelves, academic awards on walls, photos of younger him with parents who'd pushed him to be perfect, to excel, to carry the family legacy forward. Everything frozen in time, preserved like a museum to the son his mother wanted him to be. At 9:55 p.m., he walked to the east wing of the mansion, to the third door on the left, to Unji's room. He knocked. She opened the door immediately, as if she'd been standing there waiting. "Come in," she said. "Close the door behind you."
He did. The room was decorated in minimalist modern style. All clean lines and expensive furniture and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the mansion's gardens. Nothing personal, nothing warm. It could have been a hotel room except for the photographs on the dresser. Unji with her father, with her mother, with extended family members, all posed professionally, all smiling those practiced smiles that wealthy families learn to perform for cameras. "Sit," Unji said, gesturing to an armchair by the window. Jiwook remained standing. "What did you want to discuss?" "The custody hearing tomorrow. I wanted to make sure you understand what's expected of you." "I understand. I testify that Amara's current situation is unstable, that temporary custody modification is in Zara's best interest, that she should stay with family while Amara addresses the concerns raised by CPS. Good. And you'll do this convincingly, with emotion. You'll make it clear that this decision hurts you, but that you're putting Zara's needs first." "I'll do whatever I need to do." "Excellent." Unji walked closer, invaded his personal space again the way she had this morning. "And after the hearing, after Zara is living at the mansion with you and your mother, we'll need to present a united family front. You, me, your mother, all raising Zara together. One big happy family. She's 5 years old. She's not going to accept you as a mother figure just because you're living in the same house. She will eventually. Children are resilient. They adapt. And when she sees that her father's happy with me, that we're building a life together, that she has a stable home with 2 parents and a grandmother who loves her, she'll adjust. I'm not happy with you. I will never be happy with you. Then you'll learn to pretend, the same way you pretended in that board meeting today, the same way you'll pretend in that courtroom tomorrow, the same way you'll pretend for the rest of your life. Because that's what people like us do, Jiwook. We pretend, we perform, we play the roles we're assigned, and eventually the performance becomes reality."
She was standing so close now that Jiwook could smell her perfume, something expensive and floral that made him want to step back, to put distance between them, to escape this room and this conversation and this entire nightmare. But his feet wouldn't move. His body wouldn't cooperate. He was frozen, the same way he'd been frozen last night when she'd given him the choice between surrendering to her or losing Zara. "There's something else I need to tell you," Unji said quietly. "Something important. Last night, when we were together, we weren't together. You blackmailed me." "Semantics. The point is, I meant what I said about not being on birth control, and I want you to understand that if I am pregnant, I'm keeping it. No discussion, no negotiation. You'll have another child whether you want one or not, and that child will tie us together forever. They'll have your DNA, your family name, your genetic legacy, and you'll never be able to escape me." The words hit like a physical blow.
Ji-wook felt his legs weaken, felt himself reaching for the back of the armchair to steady himself. You planned this. You've been planning this since I signed those contracts. I've been planning this since you humiliated me 5 years ago, since you made me the woman Han Ji-wook didn't want, since you destroyed my reputation and my family's business prospects. This is justice, Ji-wook. This is balance. This is making sure you can never forget what you did to me. This is rape. What you did last night was rape. Yoon-ji's expression didn't change. Is it? You consented. You walked into my room. You made a choice. Under threat of losing my daughter. That's not consent. That's coercion. Tell it to the police, then. File a report. Explain to them how the powerful CEO was forced into sex by his much smaller fiancée. See how seriously they take you. See how that plays in the media. See how it affects your custody case when you are trying to prove you're a stable parent while accusing your future wife of assault.
She was right. Ji-wook knew she was right. Korea's legal system barely took sexual assault seriously when women reported it. The idea that a man could be assaulted by a woman would be laughed out of any police station, would become a media spectacle, would destroy his credibility in the custody case, would give his mother ammunition to argue that he was unstable, delusional, making wild accusations against a respectable woman from a respectable family. "I see you understand," Eun-ji said, stepping back finally, giving him space to breathe. "So here's what's going to happen. You are going to that hearing tomorrow. You're going to do exactly what we discussed. You're going to help me get custody of Zara, and then you're going to marry me, live with me, and raise your daughter with me. And in a few weeks, I'll know if I'm pregnant, and if I am, you'll have another child to raise with me, another chain binding us together, another reason you can never leave. And if you're not pregnant," Eun-ji smiled, "then we'll try again and again until I am, because I have all the time in the world, Ji-wook, and you have nowhere to go." She walked to the door, opened it, clearly dismissing him. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow is a big day. You'll want to be well rested for the performance of your life." Ji-wook walked out without responding, walked back to his childhood bedroom, locked the door, and sat on the bed he'd slept in as a teenager. His phone showed 18 missed calls from Amara, dozens of texts ranging from angry to desperate to resigned. He couldn't respond, couldn't explain, couldn't do anything except sit in the dark and count the hours until the custody hearing that would destroy the last person who still believed in him. At midnight, he finally opened one of Amara's texts. "I called a lawyer, a real one this time, not someone your family can intimidate, and I'm fighting this, Ji-wook. I'm fighting you, fighting your mother, fighting all of it, because Zara is my daughter too, and I won't let you take her just because you have more money and more power. I'll lose everything fighting you, but at least I'll lose knowing I tried." And there it was, the confirmation that Amara was going to fight him in court tomorrow, was going to oppose his testimony, was going to refuse to accept the custody modification peacefully, which meant the hearing would be contentious, which meant Jeonji would use it as evidence of Amara's instability, which meant everything was going to be worse than Ji-wook had planned. He pulled out his laptop, opened an encrypted connection, and sent a message to Attorney Lee. "Tomorrow's hearing. I need you to do something for me. I need you to record everything. Video, audio, everything. Button camera, phone, whatever it takes. Can you arrange that?" The response came 10 minutes later. "Recording family court proceedings without permission is illegal. If we're caught, it's grounds for sanctions and possible criminal charges." Ji-wook typed back, "I know. Do it anyway. I'll take responsibility if we're caught, but we need documentation of everything that happens tomorrow. Everything that's said, every lie that's told. Why? Because I'm going to say things tomorrow that aren't true. I'm going to betray Amara in front of that judge, and I need proof that I was forced to do it. Proof that the whole system is corrupt. Proof that everything that happens in that courtroom is theater designed to transfer custody to my mother. And then what? What are you planning to do with this evidence?" "I don't know yet, but I know I need it. Please, this is the only thing I'm asking for."
Another delay. Then, fine, I'll have a button camera ready. But Ji-wook, whatever you're planning, it better be worth it. Because if this goes wrong, you won't just lose custody, you'll lose everything. I already lost everything 18 months ago when I thought I could fight my family and win. This time, I'm not trying to win. I'm just trying to survive.
He closed the laptop, lay back on his childhood bed, and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow at noon, he would walk into a courtroom and destroy the woman he'd once loved, would testify against her, would claim she was unstable and unfit and incapable of providing the kind of home Zara needed, would watch her face as she realized he'd betrayed her again, just like he betrayed her 5 years ago when he'd chosen his mother's money over their marriage, would watch Zara's confused expression through the courtroom window as her parents fought over her like she was property to be divided in a corporate merger. And through it all, he'd be recording, documenting, building evidence for a case he might never be able to use, for a war he might never be able to fight, for a future that looked more like a prison sentence than a life. The morning of the custody hearing, Ji-wook woke up at 5 a.m., even though the hearing wasn't until noon. He couldn't sleep anyway, couldn't stop thinking about what he was about to do, couldn't stop rehearsing the lies he'd have to tell, couldn't stop imagining Amara's face when he betrayed her. At 7 a.m., he met attorney Lee in a coffee shop 3 blocks from the courthouse. Lee handed him a small device disguised as a button on his suit jacket. Camera and microphone, encrypted upload to secure server, battery life 6 hours, should be more than enough for the hearing. "Thank you," Ji-wook said. "Don't thank me yet. If we get caught, we're both going to jail. And I mean actual jail, not corporate white-collar facility. This is serious, Ji-wook." "I know."
They went over the testimony one more time. Ji-wook would be called as a witness, would be asked about Amara's parenting capabilities, would express concern about her financial instability, her emotional state, her ability to provide a suitable home environment, would suggest that temporary custody modification was in Zara's best interest, while Amara addressed these concerns, would position himself as the responsible parent, making a difficult decision for his daughter's welfare. It was a perfect performance. Rehearsed. Professional. Completely devastating. At 11:45, Ji-wook arrived at Seoul Family Court. The building was modern and imposing, all glass and steel and architectural statements about justice and fairness and equal protection under law. All lies. Ji-wook knew from his mother's black ledger that Judge Lee Sung-wook, who would preside over this hearing, was owned 3 different ways: blackmail material, family employment at Hanstar, and financial dependence on the Han family's continued goodwill. There was no chance of a fair hearing, no possibility of justice, just theater. He walked through security, took the elevator to the 3rd floor, found room 304. Amara was already there, sitting outside the courtroom with a lawyer Ji-wook didn't recognize. The lawyer was young, maybe 30, wearing an off-the-rack suit and carrying a briefcase that looked like it had seen better days. Not someone from a major firm, not someone with connections, not someone who could stand up to the legal team Eun-ji would bring. Amara saw Ji-wook and her expression hardened. She stood up, walked over. "I need to talk to you," she said. "Not here," Ji-wook replied, too aware of the cameras in the hallway, the court reporter nearby, the possibility that everything they said was being monitored. "Yes, here, now, because once we walk into that courtroom, I need to know, are you really going to do this? Are you really going to stand up there and testify against me?"
Ji-wook looked at her and saw everything he'd loved 5 years ago. Everything he'd tried to rebuild over the past 18 months. Everything he was about to destroy in the next hour. "I'm sorry. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. Then I hope you can live with yourself, because Zara will never forgive you for this, and neither will I." She walked back to her lawyer, and they entered the courtroom together. Ji-wook stood in the hallway for another minute, trying to compose himself, trying to become the person he needed to be for the next hour. The button camera was recording already. Everything from this point forward would be documented. He walked into the courtroom. Judge Lee Sang-wook was already seated at the bench reviewing documents. The court reporter was setting up her equipment. Eun-ji's lawyer, Mr. Sung, was unpacking a briefcase full of files and exhibits.
Amara and her lawyer sat on one side of the room. Jiwook took a seat on the other side. And in a separate room, visible through a large window, Zara sat with a social worker, playing with toys, completely unaware that the next hour would determine the rest of her childhood. The hearing began exactly at noon. If you're still watching this, you need to know that what happens in the next 20 minutes will be the most brutal scene in this entire story. And I'm telling you right now, subscribe before we continue, because perhaps the end is going to show you whether any of this was worth it, whether Jiwook's calculated betrayal actually saves his daughter or destroys her, and you're not going to want to miss a single second.
Judge Lee called the court to order. Mr. Sung, representing the petitioner's interests, stood and presented his case. He had exhibits, documents, photographs, everything carefully prepared to paint a picture of Amara as an unfit parent. Financial records showing her bookstore barely breaking even, bank statements showing she'd withdrawn 80 million won from Zara's education fund 48 hours earlier, money she'd wired to the hacker she'd hired to leak documents about the Han family. But she couldn't admit that without incriminating herself. A fabricated psychiatric evaluation from a doctor she'd never met, claiming she showed signs of adjustment disorder with mixed anxiety and depressed mood. Evidence of her researching dark web forums and encrypted communication tools, which Mr. Sung characterized as association with criminal elements. It was devastating, professional, completely fraudulent, and it was working. Judge Lee listened carefully, asking occasional questions, taking notes. Then he turned to Amara's lawyer and asked if he wanted to respond. The young lawyer stood up, clearly nervous, clearly outmatched, and said, "Your Honor, these allegations are either fabricated or taken completely out of context. Ms. Williams is a devoted mother who has raised Zara single-handedly for 5 years. The financial withdrawal was for a legitimate purpose, which she can explain." "Then let her explain it now," Judge Lee interrupted. Amara stood, and Jiwook could see her hands shaking. "Your Honor, I withdrew that money because I was investigating corruption related to this very case. I have evidence that the CPS report against me was fraudulent, that Investigator Park was bribed to file false allegations, that this entire proceeding is designed to take my daughter away from me based on lies." "Do you have proof of these allegations?" Judge Lee asked. "I'm working on obtaining proof, Your Honor. That's what the money was for." "So you spent your daughter's education fund on a conspiracy theory?" The courtroom went silent. Jiwook watched Amara's face as she realized her own lawyer's advice had led her into a trap. She tried to tell the truth, and it sounded insane. Sounded like exactly the kind of paranoid delusion Mr. Sung had described in his presentation. "It's not a conspiracy theory," Amara said quietly. "It's the truth. The Han family has been manipulating this case from the beginning. They filed the CPS report. They bribed the investigator. They fabricated evidence. They're doing all of this to take Zara away from me because I'm not wealthy enough, not Korean enough, not controllable enough." "Miss Williams," Judge Lee said, his tone shifting to something almost pitying, "do you have any evidence to support these claims beyond your own suspicions?" "Not yet, but..." "Then I'm going to ask you to stop making unsubstantiated allegations against respectable families and focus on addressing the legitimate concerns raised about your parenting capabilities." And there it was, the judge protecting the Han family, dismissing Amara's claims as delusions, setting her up to look unstable, paranoid, exactly what Eun-ji needed her to look like. Mr. Sung called his first witness. It was Jiwook. Jiwook walked to the witness stand, raised his right hand, swore to tell the truth. The button camera recorded everything. His face, the courtroom, Judge Lee's expressions, Amara's devastated reaction to seeing the father of her child called to testify against her. Mr. Sung asked his questions. Jiwook gave his answers. Every word was a knife in Amara's heart, and his own. "Mr. Han, in your assessment as Zara's father, do you believe Miss Williams is currently providing a stable home environment?" "I believe she's doing her best, but I have concerns about the stability of the current arrangement." "What concerns specifically?"
The financial instability, the unexplained withdrawal of Zara's education fund, the emotional volatility I've observed recently. The apartment above the bookstore is small and not suitable for long-term child rearing. I worry about Zara's future prospects if she continues in this environment.
Amara was crying now, trying to hide it but failing. Her lawyer tried to object, but was overruled. Mr. Han, what do you believe would be in Zara's best interest? And this was it, the moment where Jiwook either saved his daughter by destroying Amara, or told the truth and lost everything. The button camera recorded as he took a breath and said the words that would haunt him forever. I believe Zara would benefit from temporary custody modification, living with family who can provide resources and stability while Miss Williams addresses these concerns. I love Amara. I don't question her love for our daughter. But love isn't enough. Zara needs security, needs proper schools, needs a home that isn't one bedroom above a bookstore. She deserves better than what we can give her right now. Amara stood up, screaming, "How can you say that? How can you stand there? And you know this is lies. You know this." Judge Lee's gavel came down. Miss Williams, control yourself or be removed from this courtroom. Bailiffs moved toward Amara. Her lawyer tried to calm her down, but she was beyond calming, beyond pretending to be composed, beyond playing the game everyone else was playing. "You coward!" she said to Jiwook, her voice shaking with rage and betrayal. "You absolute coward! 5 years ago, you chose your mother's money over me. I forgave you. 18 months ago, you promised you'd changed. I believed you, and now you're doing it again, choosing them over us, choosing power over family. And Zara," her voice broke, "Zara is going to grow up knowing her father was too weak to fight for her." Through the window, Zara was crying, banging on the glass, trying to get to her mother. The social worker was trying to comfort her, but Zara was inconsolable, screaming, "Mama!" over and over, but the soundproofed glass meant no one in the courtroom could hear her.
Judge Lee made his ruling. Temporary custody modification. Zara to live with her paternal grandmother, Madam Han Soo-jin, pending a full evidentiary hearing in 30 days. Amara granted supervised visitation rights, 2 hours weekly, supervised by a court-appointed monitor. The decision was effective immediately. Amara collapsed. Her lawyer caught her. Jiwook wanted to go to her, wanted to explain, wanted to tell her that everything he'd just said was lies, designed to create evidence they could use later to expose the corruption. But Eun-ji was watching. Judge Lee was watching. The entire system was watching to make sure he played his part perfectly. So he just stood there and watched the woman he loved be destroyed by his own testimony. The hearing adjourned. Amara was escorted out, still crying, still broken. Zara was taken by the social worker to be transferred to the Han family mansion. And Jiwook stood in the empty courtroom with Attorney Lee, who confirmed that everything had been recorded, everything had been uploaded, everything was documented for whatever plan Jiwook was building that he still didn't fully understand himself. Outside the courthouse, Eun-ji was waiting. She walked up to Jiwook, smiled, and said quietly, "Perfect performance. You almost had me convinced you cared about her. But we both know you care more about Zara than Amara. Always have. That's why this was so easy." Jiwook said nothing, just walked past her to the black sedan where his driver was waiting. His phone buzzed. One final text from Amara. "I hope it was worth it." And Jiwook had no answer, because he didn't know yet if any of this would be worth it. Didn't know if his plan would work. Didn't know if recording the corruption would matter when he couldn't use the evidence without destroying himself. Didn't know if sacrificing Amara's trust was the price of saving Zara, or just another in a long line of mistakes he'd made by choosing strategy over honesty, manipulation over truth, playing games instead of just being brave enough to fight openly. He went back to the mansion. Zara arrived an hour later, confused and scared and asking for her mother. Madam Han explained in soothing tones that Mama was sick and needed time to get better, but Zara would see her soon, that she'd be staying with Halmione and Dad for a little while in this big, beautiful house where she could have her own room and go to the best schools and have everything a little girl could want. Zara cried herself to sleep that night in a bedroom that had been prepared for her, decorated with expensive furniture and toys and everything money could buy except the one thing she actually wanted, which was her mother. Ji-wook stood in the doorway watching his daughter sleep and wondered if he'd just saved her or destroyed her, wondered if she'd ever forgive him, wondered if he'd ever forgive himself. The next 20 days passed in a blur. Ji-wook played CEO during the day and devoted father at night, attended board meetings and strategic planning sessions and investor calls, had dinner with his mother and Eunji every evening where they discussed wedding plans and Zara's education and the future they were all building together. Endured Eunji's casual mentions of pregnancy symptoms she might be experiencing, nausea, fatigue, breast tenderness, each one a reminder that she might be carrying his child conceived through coercion, that he might be prominently changed to his rapist through biology. Amara had her supervised visits every week, 2 hours on Wednesdays. A court-appointed monitor sat in the corner taking notes while mother and daughter tried to have some semblance of normalcy in a sterile visitation room at a family services center. Zara asked constantly when she could go home. Amara had no answer that wouldn't undermine the court's decision or poison Zara against her father.
And while all this was happening, while Ji-wook played his role perfectly and Amara suffered and Zara grew more confused, both parents were planning their counterattacks. Ji-wook working with attorney Lee to build a case around the recordings from the custody hearing. Amara working with the hacker she'd hired to prepare a massive document leak that would expose the Han family's corruption to every media outlet in Korea. Neither knew what the other was planning. Both were preparing to strike on the same day. Day 20 arrived. Ji-wook had chosen this day deliberately, 10 days before the 30-day custody review hearing, enough time to let the evidence sink in, but not so much time that his mother could fully activate her contingency protocols. He'd spent weeks preparing the leak with attorney Lee, coordinating with journalists, setting up encrypted upload locations, creating redundant backups, building a dead man switch that would automatically release everything if he didn't check in every 12 hours. At 6 a.m. on day 20, the evidence went live. Seoul Times published the front page story. Han Star Empire built on corruption. Leaked documents expose decades of bribery. KBS News led their morning broadcast with the same story. Financial Supervisory Service announced emergency investigation. Seoul Metropolitan Police Financial Crimes Division issued statement promising full inquiry. The black ledger photographs were everywhere. Every page, every name, every bribery scheme, every blackmail operation. 20 years of corruption exposed in one coordinated media drop. Stock market opened. Han Star crashed 34% in the first hour. Trading was halted. Billions of won evaporated. And at exactly the same time, 6 a.m. on day 20, Amara's leak hit. Her hacker had distributed her evidence package to 50 different media outlets simultaneously. News organizations that weren't on Ji-wook's list. Watchdog groups that specialized in corporate accountability. International press that couldn't be intimidated by the Han family's domestic influence.
Her package included CPS investigators' financial records showing the 200 million won bribe, Judge Lee's offshore accounts, immigration officials' corruption, timeline of Han family political donations corresponding to favorable regulatory decisions. It was devastating, professional, overlapped with Ji-wook's leak in some areas but provided additional evidence in others. The media thought it was a coordinated mega attack, the biggest corruption scandal in Korean business history. Reporters started calling it Korean Watergate. At 6:30 a.m., Ji-wook saw the news coverage and realized someone else had leaked evidence at exactly the same time. Evidence he didn't have. Evidence that could only have come from Amara's independent investigation. He called her. She answered. "The leak," he said. "That was you. Some of it." "The ledger was you?" "Yes." Long silence. Then Amara said quietly, "We could have worked together. I couldn't tell you. Eunji was monitoring everything. If you'd known..."
You still should have trusted me, should have been honest, should have treated me like a partner instead of a problem to manage. I was trying to protect you. I didn't need protection, I needed a partner, but you keep fighting alone and wondering why you lose." She hung up. But for the first time in 20 days, there was something other than hatred in her voice. Something that might have been understanding, might have been forgiveness, might have been hope. At 8 a.m., the arrests began. Police arrived at the Hahn mansion with warrants. Madame Hahn was arrested for bribery, fraud, conspiracy to commit custodial interference. She didn't resist, didn't show emotion, just allowed herself to be handcuffed and led away while Zara watched from her bedroom window, crying. Eunji was arrested at her penthouse. Fraud, falsification of court evidence, conspiracy. She laughed as they took her away, called out to Ji-wook, who was watching from across the street, "Tell him he wins this round."
Judge Lee was arrested at the courthouse. CPS investigator Park was arrested at her home. Immigration official Choi was arrested at his office. 12 others were arrested by noon. By 2 p.m., Seoul Family Court convened an emergency session. New judge, Judge Kim, female, 50, no Han family connections. She reviewed everything. The original custody hearing recording from Ji-wook's button camera. The evidence that all testimony against Amara was fabricated. Judge Lee's corruption exposed. Eunji's fraud documented. Judge Kim's face when she finished reviewing the evidence was a mixture of disgust and professional fury. "This is the most egregious abuse of family court I've seen in 25 years, she said. "All previous orders are void. Void based on fraud, corruption, and conspiracy." She ordered Zara returned to her parents immediately. But then she paused. "However," Judge Kim continued, "this court must address the trauma inflicted on this child. She's been subjected to fraudulent legal proceedings, witnessed arrests, been bounced between homes, told repeatedly that her mother was unfit. Both parents acted in good faith, or what they believed was good faith, but the damage to this child is real and severe." Amara stood up. "Your Honor, I just want my daughter back." "And you will have her, Miss Williams, but not immediately." The courtroom went silent. "I'm ordering 30 days of therapeutic foster placement. Zara will live with a licensed foster family and receive counseling to process this trauma. Both parents will have supervised visitation twice weekly. At the end of 30 days, Zara's therapist will make a custody recommendation based on her emotional needs and stated preferences." "You can't take my daughter," Amara said, her voice breaking. "I just got her back." "This is not punishment. This is protection. She needs time away from all of you to heal, to understand that the adults' war is over, to feel safe again." The gavel came down. And just like that, after everything they'd fought for, after exposing decades of corruption and destroying the Han family empire and getting their enemies arrested, Ji-wook and Amara still lost Zara. She was taken by a kind social worker to a foster home where she'd spend the next 30 days being helped to understand that none of this was her fault, that her parents loved her, that the bad people had been stopped, that she was safe now. Both parents stood in the courtroom afterward, destroyed in different ways. "We won," Ji-wook said quietly. "We exposed everything, arrested everyone, destroyed the system that tried to take her. And it wasn't enough," Amara replied. "It's never enough, because the damage is already done." The 30 days of therapeutic foster care passed slowly. Ji-wook and Amara both attended their supervised visitations. Both tried to explain things to Zara in age-appropriate ways. Both struggled with how to help their daughter heal from trauma they'd failed to prevent. Slowly, carefully, Zara started to improve, started to smile again, started to believe she was safe, started to draw pictures that showed their family together instead of separate. At the end of 30 days, her therapist made a recommendation. Primary custody to Ji-wook, extensive visitation to Amara. Zara had chosen her father's apartment because it was quiet and didn't have scary memories. Amara accepted the decision with grace that broke Ji-wook's fight, said that Zara's peace mattered more than her pride. They became co-parents,
Professional, respectful, functional. Not the family they'd hoped to rebuild, but better than the war they'd been fighting. 6 months passed. Ji-wook got a modest apartment in Seong-sudong, 2 bedrooms, dinosaur theme in Zara's room. Simple, peaceful, everything the mansion had never been. Zara thrived, started to heal, started to feel at home. And then one evening at 7 p.m., Ji-wook's doorbell rang. He checked the video doorbell. Woman, sunglasses, headscarf, face covered. He opened the door. Unji stood there. "What are you doing here?" Ji-wook asked. "You're supposed to be under house arrest." "Trial got delayed. Technicalities. I violated restrictions to come here, so let's make this quick. I have nothing to say to you."
But I have something to tell you. She removed her sunglasses. I'm pregnant. It's yours. The world stopped. That's impossible, Ji-wook said. 6 months ago, day 3 of your return, after you stole the ledger, I told you I wasn't on birth control. You coerced me. You blackmailed. I gave you a choice. You chose. And now there's a consequence. She handed him an envelope. Prenatal paternity test. Non-invasive. 99.97% match. He opened it. Saw the results. Saw his name. Saw the proof. I'm having this baby, Yoonji said. You don't have to be involved. But when Zara asks why she has a half-sibling she's never met, you'll have to explain. And when my child grows up wanting to know their father, I won't lie. They'll know you exist. They'll know you chose your first child over them. And you'll spend the rest of your life torn, guilty, wondering. That's my revenge. Permanent, inescapable. We're connected by biology now. By a child who didn't ask to exist. You'll never escape me. Ever. She turned to leave. Congratulations, she said. You're going to be a father. Again. And she was gone. Ji-wook closed the door, stood in his hallway, holding DNA results that confirmed his worst nightmare. From the kitchen, Zara called out, Dad? Who was that? Nobody, sweetheart. Just someone I used to know. He sat on the couch, stared at the paper, realized he had to tell Amara, had to tell Zara eventually, had to live with this forever. He picked up his phone, called Amara. Ji-wook, it's late. Is Zara okay? She's fine, but I need to tell you something. Can you come over tomorrow, after I drop Zara at school? What happened? Just please come. You're scaring me. I know, I'm sorry. Tomorrow, I'll explain everything. He hung up, looked at the refrigerator where Zara's drawing hung. My family. Stick figures of Dad, Mama, and Zara holding hands, everyone smiling, together. But there was a fourth person coming, and everything was about to shatter again.
Some victories cost everything. Some enemies never leave. Some choices echo forever. Han Ji-wook sacrificed his dignity to save his daughter, was coerced by a woman who wanted revenge more than love, destroyed the woman he loved to expose corruption, became everything he hated to protect what mattered, and learned the cruelest lesson. Some sacrifices don't end when the war is over. They multiply, metastasize, become new wars your children will fight. Zara will grow up with a half-sibling born from her father's assault. Amara will learn the man she co-parents with is chained to their enemy forever. And Yoonji won. Not the custody battle, not the company. She won something more valuable. She made herself unforgettable, inescapable, eternal. Because the worst prison isn't bars, it's biology. And some cells you can never leave. This is part 3, but the story continues, maybe in part 4, where we'll see what happens when Zara grows old enough to learn the truth, when Amara must decide if she can co-parent with a man forever tied to his rapist, when Yoonji must choose between 2 children, one he fought for, one he never wanted, and when Yoonji's child asks why their father doesn't love them. Some stories don't have happy endings, they have true ones, and the truth is, family isn't always blood. Sometimes blood is just chains. What do you think Ji-wook would do? Does this story deserve more episodes? Drop your thoughts in the comments section and comment Afro-Korean sweet drama if you got this far. Don't go anywhere. I'll see you in the next story.
K Afro Tales, The weak will become strong one day.